Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. With your 2024 WWE SummerSlam instant analysis. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, just moments after WWE SummerSlam went off the air, and we are here to break down everything that happened on WWE's second biggest show of the year. Vintage Chris Vanini is here along for the ride, and we will be talking about all 7 matches on this card, multiple title changes, and one of the biggest returns WWE has had in quite some time. Right off the top, allow the Silver King to remind you that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
is all about defy.
So please, folks,
stop being marks for yourselves and go back to being a mark for me.
Go back to being marks for the Silver King Adam Silverstein, Vintage Chris Vanini, and the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. Head on over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. Tell us how much you love these instant analysis. Let us know how much you enjoy the show. And if you do, we will read your review live right here on the air. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube at Getting Overcast and follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. It is also where you can send in questions and comments for the show. We will read them on the air. We will be saving your SummerSlam questions and comments for our Tuesday WWE edition of the podcast, but you also get to vote in pre and post-show polls that help inform our instant analysis. And we, of course, will share your grades for SummerSlam at the end of this instant analysis episode. Please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well, because for $5 a month or $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You will get bonus audio, instant reactions to the major television shows, and exclusive news posts. Again, that is buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. We just got 2 new subscribers, and we will shout them out on Tuesday. Chris, we have reached the point of the program where, for these instant analysis episodes, we do something special. We crack open a cold one, and the Silver King tonight has Evening Glow from Swamp Head Brewery out of the town in which my alma mater exists, Gainesville, Florida. It is a vanilla coffee blonde ale with chocolate. Extremely excited to have this. I'm going to have to pour it into a glass on this occasion because the can ain't that cold. Vintage, what do you got over there? And welcome to the show.
Well, first things first, I ain't drinking a Prime. That's for damn sure.
No,
we can get
that's
into
done.
that later.
Yeah.
Some big news on this front. We've had a brewery open up in our town recently. And my wife and I have gone a couple times, and it's a 3 Nations brewery. I think it's a company based out of Carrollton, Texas, which is another suburb of Dallas. But they opened up a spot by us.
Awesome.
I've got a Sucker Punch here from 3 Nations Brewery. It's a watermelon Berliner, and it's delicious.
That does sound delicious. Not to shade anyone, I don't think you guys know the city that I live in, but the biggest disappointment, one of the biggest disappointments, is I love beer. I love craft beer. And the brewery that is literally 3 minutes away from my house in a car, not even exaggerating, it is my least favorite in like the 50 miles surrounding my home. And I never go there. And it's the most disappointing thing. The level to which I want them to get bought out by someone else, I cannot explain to you, because I'd be there every day. And instead I never go. And it's just such a shame. But we're not here really to talk about beer. I'm glad you have something delicious there. I certainly do as well. We are here to break down WWE SummerSlam instant analysis style. So for anyone who might be listening for the first time, what we're about to do is discuss every single match on the card. We're going to tell you if there were any go-home moments first that happened on SmackDown. We'll break down the match. We'll give you some grades, our thoughts, and we will analyze every single thing that happened on this show. At the end, we will give you a final post-show grade, our entire thoughts for WWE SummerSlam. Now, Chris, we're going to discuss all the extraneous items after we break down the entire card. I did want to say off the top, I loved this set, though, for SummerSlam. Even though WWE went minimal again inside of a stadium, it had some personality to it. There were a mix of different screens and sizes and light fixtures. It was way better than what they normally do for such shows. Now, to be fair, there's more space in a football stadium than a sold out baseball stadium will have. Also, WWE thought they were going to sell more tickets than they did. So they built it with a scaled down set when they really could have put a bigger one there and been totally fine. But I loved it. I thought it was way, way better than what we normally get.
Yeah, I didn't see enough pictures. Like, I was at SummerSlam last year in Ford Field, and on one side, there was just a giant black curtain that cut off maybe like a third of the stadium.
Right.
I don't know how exactly they worked it out here. Obviously, it's harder to do that in an open air stadium. But I thought it looked great. It felt like a big show.
It did.
A lot of stuff that happened on the show made it feel like a big show. It really felt like they made this feel like a almost WrestleMania.
A WrestleMania light. That was the thought I had. Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. And it honestly been a while since SummerSlam really felt like that. Like, they've tried, you have stadium shows here and there, but they don't play out that way. This played out that way. And so obviously a big show and a lot to talk about.
Absolutely. So let's kick it off where WWE concluded. The WWE Championship was on the line in suddenly a Bloodline Rules match. Cody Rhodes against Solo Sikoa. So first, let's explain how it became Bloodline Rules. Cody and Solo opened SmackDown with the planned face-to-face. Sikoa came out in a trench coat for the second straight week. By the way, hugely improved look for this guy. But he had the suit jacket underneath, which was just too much. I'm literally realizing, actually, now that I'm saying this, Solo reminds me of the Penguin from Batman. But he doesn't need to be. Like, he's menacing and a villain, but you don't take him that seriously, you know? Anyway, the crowd was heated from the jump. It took a while to get going. Sikoa said Roman Reigns was weak as a tribal chief when Rhodes beat him at WrestleMania, while he, on the other hand, is dangerous. As Solo suggested amending the match to Bloodline Rules, the faction came out of the crowd. They all stood ringside one by one. Cody told the Tongans he's not afraid of them. Then he said it might be stupid, but he's not scared of Jacob Fatu either. The dumb son of a bitch that he is. Great line. Rhodes admitted that it might not be a smart decision, but it's the only one he can make, so he accepted the stipulation. Sikoa chose not to have Bloodline attack 4-on-1, saying the tag team titles and the WWE title would come back to Bloodline by the time Saturday night was over. Cody closed, calling Solo a tribal chief wannabe. I thought this was excellent. Like, it was legit nuclear heat for Sikoa. It doesn't make up for the last few weeks, but they absolutely delivered on the go home, making this feel like a real main event match with heavy stakes for Cody. We talked about a lack of variety on the card coming in. Moving this to Bloodline Rules at the time, I thought certainly helped distinguish it from the rest. The Bloodline was super menacing surrounding the ring. Cody came across like a strong and confident champion. He stood up to the odds. He didn't back down. He tossed some zingers Solo's way too. I'm not sure it could have really been done much better. And I assumed going into the match that it would be far better and chaotic with the stipulation than it would have been otherwise.
Yes. I mean, we talked about on the preview, we had all singles matches. None of them had stipulations,
right?
Except for a special guest referee. So yeah, it was much needed. It added the energy and heat and interest on juice that you needed to the main event.
So ahead of the main event, Cody walked off his tour bus with Pharaoh there waiting for him. He grabbed the leash, kissed him, and walked to the ring. And I'm just sitting here worried. I'm like, please do not let Pharaoh go out with the pyro again. For the love of all that is holy, don't let that happen. So as he's walking to the ring, he comes across Arn Anderson, who put him over and gave him a pep talk about there being 4 pissed off island boys coming after him. He needed to realize that. He told Cody, he pulled some strings. Cody still got some friends. They're on the way. Then Rhodes handed Pharaoh off to his stepdad. He hugged his mom. He donned a skull mask crown with eagle wings on it, super over the top. And then he entered, obviously, the huge pyro. This is what I like to call going full send Cody. We came a Brandy Rhodes appearance and a Pharaoh entrance away from total Codyverse immersion, but we didn't get that. Luckily, it didn't happen. The reason Pharaoh was involved here, Cody said it's their last road trip together, given his age. Anyway, it was over the top. It was corny to a degree, but it kind of raised the stakes of the match. It felt way more important than it otherwise should have. And the crowd, Chris, absolutely ate it up.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get any big entrances on this show. And when you do the scaled down set, it's kind of hard to. So it felt big and it added to the stakes of the match going in. I also couldn't help but think it was kind of like a really heelish entrance almost. Like Solo's just coming out with his family. Cody's on his own personal bus. And he comes out wearing this And then he puts on this big skull and all that stuff, the same thing you wore at WrestleMania 40. So it's just like it's a little over the top, but it was good. It added to the stakes and everything, which again, what they did on leading up to this match made it feel bigger.
Was it the identical headgear?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't even realize that. Okay, I'm glad you pointed that out. So, bell rings. We get fuck you Solo and we want Roman chants at the bell. Cody hit disaster kick and a tope suicide. Got caught on a second one before eating 2 Samoan drops. Rhodes kicked the Samoan spike as a counter. He hit Cody Cutter. Sikoa came back with the Umaga hip attack and spinning Solo. Then he put Cody in the Tree of Woe and hit 2 running headbutts. Rhodes came out with a twisting moonsault, but Sikoa came back with a boss man slam. Cody caught Solo on the top rope with a superplex. Sikoa caught him coming back in a crossroad setup. Cody reversed it. The Tongans attacked before there could be a count. They prevented the cover. Fans chanted yeet. Michael Cole called them Gorillas of Destiny, and they hit their New Japan finisher, but Cody kicked out in a false finish. Kevin Owens saved, and it was so unfair to make my man jog the ramp that distance. Randy Orton was next, perhaps even more unfair to make him jog that distance. RKOs and stunners, power slam, and swanton bomb on Sikoa, plus crossroads. Then he kicks out at 2.9 with an arm raise. RKO chased the Tongans out. Cody brought steel steps into the ring for 2 shots on Solo, calling back to the AJ Styles finish. But the turnbuckle saved him. They saved him from falling down. He came back with a spear for a near fall. Solo sat Cody up with the steps behind him, but Rhodes avoided a hip attack. Then he hit 2 crossroads. Jacob Fatu spawns in. He interferes. That was before a third could be landed. Fans chanted yeet again. Fatu hit his corkscrew and moonsault for another false finish. Solo directed them to the announce table. We got We Want Roman chants. Jacob splashed him to hell through the table. Immediately sold an ankle, knee, leg, something on the landing. Looked like the knee landed right on the table's edge. Cody kicked out of a Solo splash. Then he collapsed on a spike attempt. He came back with a Cody cutter out of the corner. And then, boom. Roman Reigns music hits. The intro and the remix theme that he used for WrestleMania 40. He's wearing an OTC shirt, not over the counter. Original Tribal Chief. Reigns took his time first, storms to the ring, hitting Sikoa with a Superman punch to an insane reaction. It's the only way I can describe it. Roman delivered a massive spear. He soaked in holy shit chants. Then he nodded at Cody in respect and left the ring. He watched from the ramp. Cody kept an eye on him the entire time. He hit crossroads 1 time, retained the title in 29 minutes. They continued staring at each other for a long time, through Cody getting his arm raised, through Cody going on the top rope with all of his pyro. Now, right off the bat, before we get to the awesomeness, the Fatu injury, it seemed worked as a means of keeping him and Reigns apart. It appeared like Roman was there to take out both of them, given Cody really didn't need his help just for Solo. But the idea wasn't so much that he was helping Rhodes, rather, it was that he was taking out Sikoa with animus. That said, Jacob's knee did absolutely nail the side of the table, and Paul Levesque in the post-show said that, quote, hopefully nothing serious is wrong with the knee. It was bugging him a little bit. I'll try to find out more before Tuesday's show. But that aside, I have 2 words coming out of SummerSlam. Mission accomplished. I've been talking about WWE on podcasts for 7 years now. Many of you have been with me the entire time, and thank you so much for that. And from the beginning, I have maintained that the only way WWE could get Roman Reigns over as the monster, clear-cut, number 1 babyface they have desired was to fully turn him heel and then turn him back babyface. 7 years I've been talking about it. 9 years since that disastrous Royal Rumble. It finally happened. I certainly did not predict the bloodline story as it transpired, but this has been my strongest held take and belief about professional wrestling for nearly a decade. I've spent hours discussing it and explaining it, and never have I felt more justified doing what we do, analyzing this dumb sport, than I do tonight. The reaction Reigns received was explosive. It was generational, and it still probably could have been even hotter. The match itself kind of sucked. I mean, look, we knew it was going to. Sikoa is good, but not great in the ring. It was slow and plodding, all to set up the interferences that we knew were coming. Not just the fact that they were happening, but the names in which were going to interfere. Once RKO entered, Sikoa kicking out of all of the signatures and a crossroads was way too much. Jacob came in way too late. It wasn't logical. Cody needing to use the triple crossroads on Solo effing Sikoa of all people. It's killed the move as far as I'm concerned. Roman Reigns was right about that. You didn't tell me. I've said the same thing. You can book around that. You don't need to force using it that many times. The idea was to repeat the WrestleMania booking, but I'm not sure why they chose to go with such a direct copy. The crowd died out waiting for Roman. They knew he was coming at that point, and it's just like, okay, get to it. So the match grade, whatever, like 3.25 stars B, good, not great, definitely overbooked. But the match was so unimportant, Chris, compared to the Reigns return, which for a guy who came in and hit 2 moves and did a head nod will probably wind up being a top candidate for moment of the year, depending what else happens by the end of 2024. Reigns looked amazing. Returning the way he did with Sikoa as a single target in his sights made a lot of sense. As we said, it would have hit harder if he was defending his family. But with Jimmy out and Jay on Raw, it was basically impossible to bring him back that way. And again, the way they did it, it really had nothing to do with Cody, which is what we were concerned about, you in particular, from a logic standpoint. It was all about Solo. At the end of the day, the reaction of the crowd tells the story and sells the moment. If it got any louder or hotter, the frickin' stadium, Chris, might have imploded.
Roman Reigns is now the biggest babyface in WWE, bigger than Cody.
Absolutely.
And it's what I know that because before the match had even started, fans were chanting, "We want Roman."
Right.
Like, sorry, Cody, like that means that he's bigger than you, which is understandable. He is now what Vince McMahon always thought he could be. And it took them doing what we always said they should, which was turn him heel. You have to go heel before you go babyface. It's the whole history of professional wrestling tells you this is how it works. Seth Rollins has gone back and forth several times, and it has helped him. And so we get to this moment now where Roman Reigns comes back and he gets the biggest pop of the night. And within an hour of WWE's tweet going up, it has 20,000 retweets. That's not even quote tweets, just straight retweets. 20,000 in an hour. Popbase, one of those culture aggregating Twitter accounts, tweeted the clip of Roman Reigns coming back. Like, it's a huge, huge moment. And so, yes, they have finally accomplished what they always wanted to accomplish. But I'm going to say, I think a theme of this show was unbelievable builds for a gigantic show that felt huge. And the moments didn't quite hit as much to me as they could have. And
in all cases, are you saying that universal? Or in some cases?
Not every single case, but several.
Okay.
And so we'll start with this. I'm assuming Jacob Fatu had to have gotten hurt. And that he was meant to get taken out by Roman as well as Solo. It's the only way it would have made any sense. Because Cody at that point had kicked out of everything. He had kicked out of a splash through the table and then another splash, and there was nothing left, So if they audibled at that moment, which I have to assume they did, I understand why it didn't quite hit as well as maybe they had originally planned. The other thing, him coming out with the WrestleMania 40 theme instead of the normal theme, I think took like a split second for everybody to get.
It did.
It wasn't the normal at the beginning. It was the drums and and so everybody's like, wait, what?
And by the way, not to interrupt you, but even the normal theme, it doesn't have the dun-dun of Cody or the KO start or the glass shattering. Yeah. It isn't the type of theme where when it hits, you just immediately go crazy. It always takes a moment to register who it is.
Right. But especially when it's a version of the theme that most people have only heard one time. Not me. I've heard it a gazillion times because I have it on my workout playlist because I'm a weirdo about this stuff and I love Roman Reigns' theme and think it's one of the best ever. But most people like it took a second. I had a friend text me because I had tweeted about the at return, and someone texted me. He said it took me a second with the music. So that there's and then the reason that he came back to me was like kind of flimsy a little bit. Well, he'll explain it and all this stuff, and it's fine. But it's like, man, like Roman Reigns' return, the new biggest babyface of the company, right after one of the best heel runs we've seen in a generation, and he's coming back because Solo Sikoa was talking trash about him. You know, it's like, could have thrown a little something more in there. Is all. Now there's plenty of this to go. I always maintained I wanted him to save the Usos.
Mm-hmm.
This sets up maybe the Usos save him at some point, and it's great. And like obviously, it's going to be great, but it just didn't fully hit to me. This is not a return that I'm going to go back and watch a million times because it just there wasn't much to it, you know, and that's all. Couple other things real quick in this match. Glad Arn Anderson did not give Cody Rhodes a gun on that entrance.
The Glock. Yeah, he did not have a Glock in his jacket. That is true.
Did not have the Glock, and Cody made a comment in the post show. He's glad that Arn didn't threaten to shoot him, so that was good. But I am very curious where this all goes now, because Roman has to face Cody for the belt, just based on what he did at the end of that match. And Cody even admitted it afterward. He was like, Roman's entitled to a rematch. It's a match that has to happen. So I'm curious how they mix Cody and Solo and Roman and all that stuff moving forward. But it's great that Roman's back. He's awesome. He's going to get unbelievable face cheers. That when he did the spear and the ooh-ah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, my God. It was so loud.
Moment. That was the moment.
Yeah.
That was bigger than the return music pop. That was incredible. So it's awesome. I'm glad that he's back.
I don't disagree with most of what you're saying. I do think you're underplaying the moment because it didn't happen exactly how you wanted, and it didn't happen exactly how I wanted either, you know, to be fair with you. But it was pretty freaking massive. And even though, again, and I said this on so many shows, like 3 weeks in a row, I hated that they beat us over the head with Solo starting to talk shit about Roman when he did not do that for multiple months. They gave that away. If it was a total surprise, it would have been even better, even if the fans were chanting for Roman the entire time. At the same time, if you're sitting at home and you had a 3-year title reign and you're depressed and whatever, and this guy who you anointed as the tribal heir, the guy to succeed you, if you ever get injured and your career ends, which is not what happened to him, is there taking your spot and trying to run your family, and then on top of that, shitting on you verbally and takes out your wise man and takes out Jimmy Uso, your cousin. That's enough reason to come in and say, I want to murder this effing guy. So I don't think that it was like a light reason for him to return. I think it was completely legitimate. It just wasn't what you and I and probably a lot of other people thought was the best possible and hottest and most emotional way for him to return. There are so many other ways they could have done it better, but I still think it was awesome.
The way I'd put it is, look, it's going to do bonkers social media numbers. I mentioned it. Everybody's talking about it. The reason it's going to do huge numbers and the reason everybody is talking about it is because we were excited for him to come back. It's not what they did in this moment that caused everybody to go crazy over it. It was just simply that he came back. And that's the only spot where I think it's a missed opportunity, where they didn't build off. They didn't create a moment. It was more a reaction to just generally him being back.
Yes, it was not Sami Zayn hitting Roman with a steel chair. It was not that, where you get that moment and everyone just goes absolutely wild, which you would love to see. And by the way, by bringing him back now and still having Jay and Sammy on the other show and Jimmy not there at all, there is still the possibility for multiple versions of that moment to unfold between now and 2025. Last thing on this topic, since you brought it up, you're saying Roman deserves a title match against Cody. I would say, sure, I agree with you. Cody said as much in the post show. Like, that's legitimate. It's not his focus right now, clearly, right? It's taking his family back. If you had to guess when it would happen, no, let's play this out a little bit, because we booked the damn territory and we like to play things forward here. It seems pretty obvious that War Games is Bloodline Civil War. I'd be shocked if by the time we get there, the sides aren't drawn and that match doesn't happen. Makes me believe that we might get Cody Roman at the Royal Rumble as a rematch. Possibly at that point is when The Rock gets back into the picture, Reigns fails to win the title, and so on. That is the way I am projecting things out right now. What do you think?
That makes a lot of sense, because if you're going to do Rock Roman, does it have the title? It absolutely does not need the title at all, especially if it's going to be involving multiple bloodlines. It could also be for The Rock's stupid People's Championship title that he gave himself from Muhammad Ali. Roman could claim that, although Cody claimed it.
I cannot wait to start talking about that title again, because I mean, I had so much fun ripping that apart when they first did it. When that thing comes back on screen, that's going to be a blast. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. But Cody kind of seemed to be the person for that, so I don't know. And it 100% would be completely in character for The Rock to want the real life Rock, Dwayne Johnson, to want the title to be on the line. In which case he fights Roman for it.
Right.
It's not going to be at Berlin. Probably not going to be at Berlin. The other thought is Bad Blood in Atlanta.
Yep.
It's Cody's hometown, but it's also Roman played football at Georgia Tech.
He did.
In Atlanta. They've been hyping up that show.
It's the last. Dude, it almost sold out the day tickets went on sale. They may have underestimated the demand in that market.
It is the only remaining pay-per-view in America.
That is correct.
Because they announced Survivor Series will be in Vancouver. So I think it's one of those two. It's got to be either Atlanta or Royal Rumble. I don't think it. I mean, it could be Saudi, but
oh God, could you fucking imagine?
But I hope not.
You run that back at Blood Money in the Sand. That would be absolutely disastrous. All right.
Yeah. Real quick. The only other thing you made a line about Roman, in the whole storyline there. The idea that he's trying to get his family back from Solo is essentially what you said. He's not doing that though. None of them are there. That's kind of my whole.
No, it's control of the bloodline. It's the overall family. His guys like the Usos aren't on screen.
But what does Solo have that he took from Roman?
The mantle of tribal chief.
It's the name he gives himself. That's it. Roman just came out with a shirt that says that ain't true. So
but he's the one putting money on the table. He's the one getting title matches. I mean, look, it's all wrestling and kayfabe. I mean, but he did step in for Reigns and take control of the dominion that he previously commanded. He tried to throw a coup.
Right, but it's not like he's got the bloodline car and all this stuff that comes with being it's just literally what
I don't know. He was iced. He's iced out
because nobody else is there.
He's iced out. He got a suit budget. I mean, I don't know.
That's true.
He's got some money coming in. He's got the gloves.
Roman never wore the suits. That's what we wanted.
And he still isn't. I mean, in this case, it was okay, but he's still.
What do we think? What do we think about him coming back wearing a t-shirt?
In this case, it was okay because he was getting physically involved. I really hope he comes out looking dapper. But I don't think he will because it's kind of Cody's thing. They're on the same show. Like, there's a lot that needs to get worked out. Having huge babyface Roman, huge babyface Cody on the same show. That's tough. That's really difficult to manage.
And we think OTC is original tribal chief.
Yeah.
I was thinking one true chief or one tribal chief, but I think original makes sense, like an OG.
Yeah, exactly. Original gangster, exactly. All right, that's a lot of bloodline. I know it was super important. We have a lot more to talk about coming out of SummerSlam. Let's move to CM Punk against Drew McIntyre with Seth Rollins as the special guest referee. During the Friday kickoff, Larry and AJ Lee both got chants. McIntyre said they should be the main event. He ripped Punk for being injured 75% of the time since he's come back to wrestling, while he's run through the entire WWE roster. Drew said Seth would be forced to stop the match because the violence would become too uncomfortable. Then McIntyre ripped Michael Cole as a biased mark, which Cole said proved his point that Drew was easily distracted. And then he kissed the AJ and Larry bracelet to end it. It was by far the best part of the kickoff, but really nothing else to discuss. This was the third to last match on the card. Rollins entered looking like Beetlejuice with a striped trench coat. He wore sparkly, baggy pants. CM Punk later called them Sabu pants, which was very funny. And a red and white bedazzled muscle-style referee shirt with black stripes, basically see-through lace. It was somehow toned down for him, which I kind of appreciated. McIntyre had green highlights on his gear. Punk was obviously in pink. for Bret Hart. Rollins got the crowd super hyped by delaying the bell. Then he sat on the top rope like Shawn Michaels, allowing a full-on brawl ringside. Punk slammed McIntyre's head into the steel steps like 5 times. Drew swung Punk into the announce table before doing a catapult under the ring. McIntyre had control from here, hitting power bombs and power moves. He brought in a chair, telling Seth to avert his eyes so he can save the industry. Rollins turned his back, but he changed his mind. He grabbed the chair, just like SummerSlam 97. Rollins said, do it the right way, and that he embarrassed him at WrestleMania. He went to hit McIntyre with the chair, but Drew dodged it, and Rollins stopped himself from accidentally hitting Punk. McIntyre put on the bracelet. Punk countered Claymore with a jump kick, and then did a Randy Savage elbow drop with a kiss to Rollins beforehand. Punk locked an Anaconda Vice, but he noticed the bracelet, and he broke the submission to regain possession of it. McIntyre caught him standing back up with a Claymore for a false finish. Rollins put on the bracelet to clear the canvas. Punk countered Future Shock DDT, running McIntyre into the corner. As he lifted Drew for go to sleep, he noticed the bracelet, with Rollins explaining he isn't messing with him, he just picked it up off the canvas. McIntyre took advantage with a double shot from behind. Punk countered Future Shock into a go to sleep. Rollins needed to run back inside. He had got knocked out of the ring for a delayed count and a false finish. Punk screamed at Rollins and got in his face. He shot back. It's his rules. It's his company. WWE doesn't need Punk. The wrestlers don't want him, and not everything is about him. Rollins told Punk to focus on McIntyre, who was prone in the corner, and he called him an asshole. It looked like Punk was relenting. He was going to focus on Drew. He instead hit Rollins with the GTS. Punk retorted that it's not always about him, but it's never about Rollins. He took the bracelet and kissed it. McIntyre hit a blatant low blow kick and Claymore that Punk didn't sell perfectly, but it was enough for the delayed 1-2-3 with McIntyre winning in 17 minutes. Drew then grabbed the bracelet and walked out on top. And by the way, as a point of order, with this victory, McIntyre became the lineal AEW champion and the lineal real AEW champion because Punk never got defeated for either title before leaving the company. Back to the match. I'm completely mixed about this one, Chris. On one hand, it simply did not live up to expectations. On the other, the storytelling was detailed and thorough. As we discussed on the Ultimate Preview, Rollins' insertion into this feud, it just made the story worse. And it ultimately made the match less definitive. WWE spent 6 months building this feud, only for it to turn from a Punk McIntyre blood battle to not even 33%, but 50% about Rollins. Like at the last minute in the final 3 weeks. And that was reflected in the match itself. Now, this would not have been a problem if they had already fought once or twice. But for the first meeting after 6 months of the hottest build that we have gotten in wrestling, I know we praised, Cody Rhodes finishing the story and the bloodline and all this, but from a pure heat standpoint, this is the hottest build for a match that we've seen in a long ass time. I think I speak for everyone saying we all wanted Punk and McIntyre going wild on each other, ripping each other's heads off. Now, that said, we did get that for the first half of the match. Rollins was indifferent to the rules. It seemed like it was heading in the right direction. I also give respect to the consistent, detailed storytelling, not just with the bracelet, but with the way they interacted with one another. At the same time, the fact that the bracelet played such a role here and Punk would be his own worst enemy because of a piece of thread and beads, not once but twice, it actively dragged down the match. If the goal is Rollins Punk at WrestleMania, why are you having him take a GTS 7 to 8 months early? If you're going triple threat at WrestleMania, it feels like it's starting way too soon. McIntyre Punk is still unresolved given the level of heat between them. How do you transition back to that one-on-one feud without Rollins being involved now? His focus has to be on Punk. He took a GTS. This confuses me. The match itself was a bit sloppy. Punk clearly had a lot of ring rust. That is excusable. He was also solidly, and people may disagree, I thought he was solidly the heel here again. And I'm not being facetious. He was the heel side fully, despite showing sentimentality. I'm a storytelling plus match quality person. The former was on point, even if it wasn't what I wanted. The latter left something to be desired, again, probably due to ring rust and also the concentration on storytelling. I'm at 3.5 stars B. Maybe I go a little bit higher on rewatch. For this big match to finally transpire, it just did not live up to expectation.
So it was good. It was solid. I enjoyed it. But every single concern and fear that I laid out in that ultimate preview is exactly how it played out. Seth took up way too much energy and focus and time, and it took a lot of the heat off of the match. And we knew Seth was going to get involved. It started with that promo segment on Monday where Seth was like calling both these guys bozos and like actively taking the heat off the match. Like, I couldn't believe what he was doing. Drew got it back on track in that promo segment. It got us ready for this. And the video package for this match was awesome. They did a great job with the promo package and for everything. Got me hyped up for this. And it just became way too much about Seth. And you keep saying Punk's the heel here, Drew's the face. You're right. That's the whole reason the bracelet is here. Because they need something for Drew McIntyre to do that's like kind of heelish. Who cares about a stupid bracelet that we didn't even get any backstory for? We never were told like, hey, some sick kid made this for CM Punk.
They explained it. You're wrong about that. They did explain it. But continue.
What did they say?
They said it was given to him by a fan, and he's worn it ever since. It means a lot to him because it has AJ and Larry's name on it.
Right, but it was like it was given him to somebody like that's it. Like who like
look. I'm a sentimental guy, okay, but CM Punk is 45 years old. He should not have that much of attachment to a bracelet given to him by a normal fan that has his wife's name, who's alive, thankfully, and his dog's name, who's also alive, on it. Why does it matter so much? It doesn't make any sense. It shouldn't distract a guy of his pedigree and his experience level from beating the shit out of somebody.
But the problem was they didn't have a motivation for Punk. The original motivation was he injured me.
Yeah.
And because Punk then screwed over Drew so many times.
3 times. Yeah.
That it was like, well, okay, like I don't feel bad for Punk anymore. And it's why I keep coming back to, I do think Punk, this is me totally speculating. I think Punk was injured longer than they had hoped. And that you had hoped.
Agreed.
You do the first match of this in Scotland. Would have been an insane scene. You run it kind of like this. Drew McIntyre wins through some nefarious way. He wins in Scotland. You do the second match, wherever the last show was. I forget where it was. And then you do the big blow off at SummerSlam. That's your big thing. And instead, Punk wasn't ready. And so they had to have him keep screwing Drew over to try to keep heat on things. And they give you the first match at SummerSlam. And I think we could get the big blow off for these guys, maybe just the 2 or maybe a triple threat at Bad Blood. You run a Hell in a Cell. You get these guys totally bloody and everything, and they go balls to the walls and give you what they want. This did not live up to the hype. Drew McIntyre said on Monday he was going to kill CM Punk. He said he was going to do this until his heart stopped beating. And instead, he just pins him and takes a bracelet. Like, he didn't live up to what he was saying either. And so I think there obviously is more coming. I think we will get the big blow off. But we wanted it here because of everything that had gone into it. And the story has lost some heat. Part of that's because of time. A big part of that is because of Seth Rollins. And I think a part of that is because they never planned for this to be the blow off. And so they have to buy some more time.
If you remember when CM Punk sat down for that interview with Ariel Helwani ahead of WrestleMania, I think he was asked about his injury, and he said something along the lines of, "We feared it was worse than it is. I'm going to get back quicker than people think." And therefore, I believe there's a lot of credence to your opinion. I believe he was supposed to come back sooner, and the recovery just didn't go the way they thought. That would also explain why Seth Rollins was brought back on a random Raw at a city that wasn't an impressive location for a star of his caliber to return, with no teases of it, with no inclination or indication, I should say is the better word, that it was going to happen. And then he gets thrown into a title match that he loses via happenstance, and now we get what we got. It would make sense. But none of that changes the fact that WWE, Triple H, Paul Levesque, they now have to figure out a way to extricate Rollins from this feud so we can get McIntyre Punk one-on-one without interference, without bullshit, and then reinsert him into the Punk issue so that we can get them fighting each other, presumably at WrestleMania, because they want that to be a main event match. I have no idea how they are going to successfully accomplish that. You mentioned Bad Blood, doing the Hell in a Cell match, McIntyre and Punk. We've been thinking about that for quite some time. What if that's a triple threat Hell in a Cell with all three of them? But let's say it is just those two. That's 2 months away. So we now have 8 more episodes of Raw that we need to get through to potentially get the one-on-one match that we've been waiting for. Now, they could have a match at Bash at Berlin, certainly. It doesn't seem like the type of show or location where you would do this match, but possibly, maybe they do a triple threat. Rollins leaves after that.
Triple threat. Yeah, I think you can do the triple threat, or you just have Seth fight Gunther at Bash at Berlin and you take him out that way. I don't know.
You could potentially do that. But you could do the triple threat. Rollins is the one who gets pinned. Therefore, there's no more reason for him to be involved in anything. Maybe McIntyre pins Rollins. Then you go McIntyre, Punk, Bad Blood. And then Rollins is waiting on the other side for Punk. That's the only way I can really see this transpiring because of the corner, to a degree, that they've booked themselves into. Now, I'm going to say this a couple times on this show. Do I want to see Raw on Monday to find out what the hell's going to happen? You bet your ass I do. You know, like there's something to be said for coming out of a major show and being confounded a bit by like the storytelling and saying, okay, how the hell are they going to get out of this? There's 2 ways to get someone to watch a show. It's one, this is so freaking good that I can't wait to see what happens next. And the other is, I have no idea what they're going to do here. I can't wait to see what they do Monday night. And this is falling into the latter category for me.
It was tough again because like the heat was so big, and Drew talking about how he basically wanted to kill CM Punk, and he pins him, he takes the bracelet, and then he's on the post show just kind of laughing it up. You know, like, has he lost his motivation now? I don't think he should have. Like, he cost him the title. Like, McIntyre should be like, I'm done with Punk. I'm going after the world title, and Punk somehow keeps this going. You know, like that's what has to happen.
Yeah, like what the hell else are they going to do to each other? You know?
Right.
Like he's cost him the title 3 times. He's beat the shit out of him, left him bloodied in Chicago.
McIntyre quit in the middle of all this too. Like they again, this is what said by the theme of the show for SummerSlam was stuff that was built up incredibly well and didn't land as good as it could have. On your second biggest show of the year.
Okay, you're at 2, but I don't know if the same thing can be said for the next match we're going to talk about. Let's go ahead and transition out of this because we got 5 more to discuss. Let's go to the Women's World Championship. We had Liv Morgan against Rhea Ripley. This opened the show with Dominic Mysterio ringside and Liv playing cat and mouse around the ring until Rhea faked her out. And then they did this real kind of probably not meaning to be seductive, but they crawled toward each other, and it was quite a moment.
Gonna look good, but she's got me saying, hey now!
Ripley dominated at the onset and did Riptide into the top turnbuckle after a headbutt. Morgan escaped a normal Riptide attempt, threw Ripley into the corner with her heavily selling a dislocated shoulder, including what looked like a protuberance, but it was Ripley holding her arm and flexing it in a way where a bone stuck out. It was excellent work by her.
Yeah.
She also got run into the steel steps before Liv worked the limb. Dom pushed Rhea aside to eat a tope suicida from Liv, so before Ripley got in the ring, she drilled her own shoulder into the announce table and then pulled it from the socket to a huge pop. In reality, Dom could have done this for her at any point during the match, but it was cooler to see her do it herself. I digress. Morgan countered Riptide into a spiked DDT, but Rhea put her in a one-armed prism trap. Liv came back with a perfect crucifix driver and an armbar that Ripley countered into a powerbomb. Rhea talked shit, leading to a surprise Liv headbutt and an arm pull over the ropes that dislocated the shoulder a second time. Morgan grabbed a chair herself as Ripley fixed the shoulder into the turnbuckles. She hit Riptide but didn't cover, instead grabbing the chair. Dom grabbed it over the ropes as she went to use it, reminding her that she can't exactly win the title by disqualification. Fans booed, but in the moment, he was completely right. Morgan took advantage by dropkicking Ripley into Mysterio and hitting Oblivion for a false finish. Massive pop, by the way, the first time anyone has ever kicked out of Oblivion. Dom then distracted the referee, similar to the other Liv wins. I think he pushed the chair also to the other side of the ring. That gave Morgan an opening to hit Oblivion into the chair, and she retained the title in 16 minutes. He immediately had a shit-eating grin on his face, but it was sold as happenstance until highlights ended. He lifted Liv off the ground and straight up made out with her. Then they walked arm in arm around each other backstage as Rhea seethed, sitting in the corner. Dom also flicked off the crowd as they left.
PG, brother.
There was also a top-tier call by Michael Cole here, and I'll get that clip and I'll play it on our Tuesday show as we give you a second look at SummerSlam. Chris, honestly, I know what you said about those first two matches. This was as close to perfection as you can get executing a storyline like this. The swerve of Dom seemingly helping Rhea first, her kicking out of the finisher, the chair element again playing a role, Liv getting the first pin of Rhea since the last time she got pinned by Liv 2 years ago, and Dom not just making the level 2 heel turn, but doing it in a way that was not obvious until after the fact, leaving all of us as viewers guessing, despite that smile. It was excellent. I mean, Dom has basically created a new category of heel at this juncture. He's legitimately, I'm going to use the term a second time on this show, generational in this role. What a turnaround for this guy. And as Jacobius82 wrote in, not playing off the chair situation as a potential accident was refreshing for a change. Beyond that, the match story was superb, utilizing Ripley's injured shoulder, staying away from the Liv Dom seduction, making us believe they actually were done with each other. And even beyond that, the actual wrestling between them was extremely high quality. Liv continues improving every time she gets a big match. I thought it was a brilliant show opener, a high quality match. I honestly thought from an in-ring perspective, it was the best thing of the entire night. And a lot of people are going to underrate this match. I am not. 4.5 stars and an A.
Fantastic match. It's my number 2 match of the night. We haven't gotten to my number 1 yet, but this was a
I already know what your number 1 match is, but
yeah. It's
yeah.
It's Jelly Roll Austin Theory. This was really, really well done. It's always tough when you want to do big giant Rhea against tiny Liv, and how you going to do it.
Right.
And they did it in a really, really creative way. Shoulder into the post, given the previous shoulder injury, like, made total sense in the world. This is not taking away from this match, but that shoulder into the post thing happened like 4 times on this card.
Yeah.
It was really, really weird. Like 4 or 5 matches it happened to. And even in the main event, Solo did it when he tried to do the spinning solo into the stairs and he hit his butt on the stairs.
It was similar.
He got out of the way.
Yeah.
It was similar. It's like, I don't know how the agents worked that out, but like, it happened in every single match. It was weird. But
it was just to be clear, it was the first 4 matches in a row. And it was the first, this was the first one, so it was fine here. And it actually was part of the match story because she had an injured shoulder.
Right.
But then to do it 3 more times, match after match after match in succession, was immensely frustrating and obvious.
It was very weird. But for this match, it made total sense and it worked. Right. And also, Rhea's selling of Oblivion, the best we've ever seen anybody do it. And she did it twice. Head to the ground and flips over instead of just a face plant.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome stuff from all of them. Great job by both of them. Really happy for it. Dom's turn. And again, this is where I'm trying not to be like, just because it's not the way I wanted it,
right,
doesn't mean it's not good. And something else later happened in the show that also may have kind of played this out. So Dom does what he does and he smiles, and then he kisses Liv after. Did you get the sense that Liv was surprised by that in character?
So yes, I did.
That's I didn't think that at first, but when I watched it again, I was like, I think this was Dominic doing this, and it was because Cole called it. He said, "Was this a ruse all along?" And I was like, I don't know, because Liv seemed surprised by it, which is different than what happens later in the show with somebody else. So you thought Liv was surprised by it too?
So I didn't have that in my notes as it being my perception of the moment, but I also didn't consider one way or another. Thinking back on it now without having rewatched the clip, my memory is that he picks her up off the ground and she's like, what's going on? And then he plants the kiss on her. They don't kiss each other.
Yep.
So if you asked me, what do you think through your memory, not watching the clip a second time, then I would say he turned. She didn't know it was going to happen, but obviously she was super pleased that it did.
And that plays into what we had thought. I mean, we both predicted Dom was going to turn, but I had thought that Liv going over the top the last 2 weeks, being so distraught that Dominic would say no to her, was itself the ruse, that she was overselling it so Rhea wouldn't believe that they had this plan. So that's why I was kind of surprised. I was like, oh, that's not how I expected the turn to happen. What I expected and what I wanted was something like Rhea's going for the pin, 1, 2, Dom pulls the referee out. And she's like, what? And he just has this look on his face. So it's like a clear cut, like, boom, there's a turn moment. Liv wins. Instead,
I gotta disagree with you. Man.
Instead, they went with, wait, what did he do there? And then it's the finish, and then he picks up and kisses her, and like, oh, boo, boo, boo. So like in the moment, I was like, that wasn't like as
definitive,
clear and direct as I was thinking at first.
Yeah, I mean, I totally disagree with you that your suggestion there would have been better, because we always get that. Like, that is always what freaking happens. And the story they've been telling, you have to remember, match after match, is Dom sliding the chair in the ring, seemingly trying to cost Liv the title, but every single time actually helping her win the title inadvertently. Now, it is possible that all those other instances were indeed inadvertent. And now he realized what happened all those times, and he just simply did it again. But I think the idea of him turning on Rhea, and certainly Liv had an influence in it, but not with a huge grand master plan between them, actually gives him agency, which he's never had since joining Judgment Day, since Rhea whispered in his ear and recruited him over there. My guess is what we're going to get Monday on Raw. I think we will learn that the turning point, you'll remember this happened a few weeks ago. He said something to the line of, mommy belongs to me, or she's mine, or whatever the case. And she flipped it on him and said, you belong to mommy. And he's like, oh, okay. And like hugged her and all that type of shit. My guess is that is when something clicked in his head, that I have this beautiful woman who is buying me chicken nuggies and a PS5 and a 4K TV and treating me like royalty and calling me daddy. And then I have this other one who's whispering in my ear, making me turn on my family, perhaps. Maybe that's a step too far. But making me do things for her, concerned about me helping her title reign, all these things, and I belong to her. Why would I want to be with her when I can be with Liv? And him coming to that realization. The question is going to be, did he plan it from the beginning, or did he come to that decision during the match? And I think that's what we're going to learn on Monday.
Yeah, I cannot wait to see his explanation on Monday. The boos are going to be crazy. He had to turn. He's a heel.
He had to turn.
And Rhea's not. And so he's going to get that crazy monster heat again. And it's going to be good.
And for all the options we talked, maybe it'll be Finn Balor because he and Liv had the history. I mean, we'll talk about him in a moment.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
But it had to be Dom. And like, we tried to talk ourselves out of it being the obvious move, but in the end, it did have to be the obvious move for this to work and for them to execute it the way they were trying to execute it. Really quick, before we talk about the backstage segments, do you think we're getting Ripley against Dominic at WrestleMania? Because, and the reason I ask is, that thought had never really come into my mind, but coming out of this match, as I was like putting notes down, I was thinking, how does this resolve itself? I do not think this feud can actually resolve itself until they fight each other in a major match. And the only show at which that would be appropriate would be WrestleMania.
I remember thinking, I think we talked about it maybe at the time, was the idea of Rhea versus Dom back when he was still with Ray. Because remember, she attacked him. She got him in the fingers, the leg scissors and all that stuff.
Right.
So like, they've gotten physical before. I think they have to do it. You have to do the two of them together, and it makes sense, and you can sell it. But man, like, not to get too into it, but like, in this like whole culture we're in, is WWE going to do that and do it on the biggest stage?
For those two, I think you can. I mean, they did it with China and Eddie Guerrero, and they're
They
pretty
did.
much
It
telling
was a
that
much,
story.
it was a much different time then.
To do that match and have Rhea, because you have Rhea beat Dom, obviously. That is what makes it okay. I don't think there would be that much backlash given from a size standpoint. I mean, she matches up well with him. He's taller than her, like legitimately, but she's more muscular than him, and she's dominant, and she's a champion, and he isn't. I mean, I think you can pull it off. If I had to bet money, put money down, I would bet that match happens at WrestleMania.
I mean, if you're going to do it, that feels like where you have to do it, but also like that's a long ways away.
It is.
You know,
it's 8 months.
Like I don't know. Maybe you do. I don't know. Do you think they'd be allowed to do that in Saudi Arabia?
That's the one place I would say that will not happen, especially with the woman beating the man. That ain't happening.
What's funny enough, not funny or just interesting. LA Knight, one of the reasons he left TNA and got fired, was because he didn't want to fight Tessa Blanchard. He thought that men and women shouldn't fight. It was 200. It had no issues with women. It was just, he didn't think it was realistic enough.
And you know what? There are many cases in which I agree with the lack of realism.
Right.
When you put certain women and certain men together, these two though would be the most realistic, almost.
Yeah, and Rhea and Nia of all. I mean, Nia has been in the Royal Rumble. She's taken RKO's. Natalia's been in this. Like, it's happened for sure. I just wonder the way certain things are going sometimes, the way people react to things in the Olympics, and some stuff that Logan Paul tweeted.
I was gonna say when you have an asshole like that,
I don't know. Pat McAfee too. Yep. That I don't know, like, if they want to potentially open that door.
It's a really good question.
To people who don't follow wrestling and may look at Rhea Ripley and think something and create an entire storm out of that. And I would hate for that to happen.
Yeah. You know what? I almost hope they do it to fight against that. Not that WWE's coming out to be a rebellious organization, but it's not really rebellious when, look, it's a difficult subject for us to broach on a instant analysis, but what Logan Paul said in particular, more so than Pat McAfee, although what Pat McAfee said as well, problematic, it would be the lightest way of discussing it. And when we have more time, we'll spend more time talking about it. Probably on Tuesday's WWE show. Let's move on. We got a couple matches left here. Immediately after this happened, this match, backstage, Judgment Day was flummoxed. They had no idea what was going on. Damian Priest storms in. He kicks a chair. He grabs Finn Balor by the collar, asking if it was his doing. Balor denied it, saying they're all pissed off. He told Priest, concentrate on your match. The three of us will go handle it. Priest later told Balor he was out of line, and he straight up apologized to him. Finn did the same, and he said that he would get Damian's back ringside if he changes his mind, but he was not able to find Dom. He was not able to find Liv. I was so glad they did this immediately on the show and didn't make us wait completely until Monday, because there's no reality in which something like this happens and all your boys backstage either aren't there, which of course they would be because two of their faction members were in big matches, but even beyond that, don't have opinions or reactions to it that need to be addressed immediately. I figured that it was going to be super interesting to see how this develops. You presume Dominic was out of Judgment Day, but Priest confronting Balor like that, I mean, we see what Finn's been doing this entire time. Was that all a pure misdirection to make Dom a tad less obvious, or is there a greater split coming up? That was my mindset coming out of these developments before we got to the World Heavyweight Championship match.
I loved that they did this, regardless of anything that happens later on. Just like even Dom turning on Rhea was big enough. We needed to know what Damian Priest and the other people in Judgment Day thought. And if there's one not criticism, but one thing I'd like to see more on pay-per-views, it's the backstage stuff between segments. Because just like you do on Raw and SmackDown feel like living, breathing shows where stuff is still going on. And in the Attitude Era, that was such a big thing for pay-per-views. It's been a while since we've had that, where it feels like there's stuff going on backstage as well. Yes, this is a huge member of Judgment Day just turned on somebody else. I want to know what they're thinking right away because Priest is still coming up later. Don't tell me Monday. Yeah. So love this. Really glad they did.
It's one thing if you do it in the main event of a show and therefore the show ends and fine, you got to wait till Monday. But if you're going to do something in the opening match, you absolutely have to talk about it. And they did. And you're right. WWE had actually gone away from this largely because they save it for major shows. The B shows, they just run through matches and they do their advertising and that's pretty much it. But there were 4 different occasions in which we saw backstage stuff during this show. So like people are going to go count the match time and they'll say there was only 2 hours of wrestling on an almost 4-hour show. True, but there were pre-match brawls and there were multiple backstage segments. There was a lot of live entertainment beyond just the bell-to-bell in-ring action. And that was just 2 examples, those 2 segments of that stuff. So let's move to the co-main event of the show, the World Heavyweight Championship, Damian Priest defending against Gunther.
Oh, we got 2 big meaty men bumping me tonight.
Priest attacked with a forearm, grabbing momentum right at the bell. He also had a bell clap and a broken arrow a few minutes later before busting Gunther's chest open hard way with chops. Ooh. He came back with a shotgun dropkick, Gunther did, and a powerbomb, but Priest answered with a roundhouse kick and South of Heaven for a slightly delayed cover and false finish. Priest set up Razor's Edge, but it got countered. Gunther delivered some heavy-ass shots and chops, with Priest waving for him to bring more. I mean, Gunther just was clubbing him in the chest. Balor came out of the crowd wearing Priest's shirt, banging on the mat, trying to rally his guy. Gunther rubbed his own blood off his chest through his hair as it continued dripping down his chest. Now, you may say, Silver King, why didn't you have a problem with this? The answer is easy. It's his own blood. That's why I didn't have a problem with it. This was very much a nobody makes me bleed my own blood type of moment. That's how I saw it. He booted Balor through the ropes, giving Priest anger and recovery time. He had a huge lariat and a clothesline Priest did coming back, plus Razor's Edge and South of Heaven. But Balor flung Gunther's foot on the bottom rope to break the count in another already heel turn. Priest saw the replay on the huge stadium screen as Balor turned back around with a scowl on his face, his back to Priest. Gunther caught Priest through the ropes in a sleeper hold, with Priest looking at Balor as he nearly passed out. Priest escaped the sleeper and immediately lunged through the ropes, trying to choke Balor. Looked psychotic, eyes fully bugging out of his head in anger. You could argue this was the moment of the match. Just given it came after the escape, it was super hot, but he took the eye off the ball. And he did it in the title match. That's how much rage he was filled with. Gunther hit a powerbomb and a full rear naked choke as Priest passed out, with Gunther winning the World Heavyweight Championship in 16 minutes. He kissed his wife, Ginny, and then he stood up on top of the announce table celebrating. My only critique here, one critique, is how telegraphed the Balor interference became, given those 2 backstage segments. I wish it was a bit less obvious, but they certainly felt like those segments were needed to build anticipation for the match itself, and that did work. The wrestling between Priest and Gunther was extremely strong.
Big meaty man slapping meat. That's what I want.
It seemed unlikely that Priest was going to beat Gunther if it was clean, and obviously once Balor ended up ringside, it became even more obvious what the finish was going to be. Not having him directly interfere, though, with a weapon, but rather like just saving Gunther one time and Priest's own anger over the disloyalty costing him, that was kind of a fresh way to do it. The use of the big screen was so logical and smart, and the camera shot of Priest, hands on his hips, looking at that screen, just straight up disappointed and dejected. That was such a great camera shot. On top of that, Priest was booked exceptionally strong. He got some big babyface moments, particularly powering out of the sleeper. The crowd didn't cheer for him as much as they would like an established babyface, like a Jey Uso, but they absolutely got behind him and will treat him like a face going forward. Ultimately, it's tough to argue with the way they booked this, given the overall goal was for Gunther to win the title and to split Judgment Day, making Priest a full-fledged face. Plus, as I've pointed out so many times on this podcast, Balor aligning potentially with Liv over Rhea makes all the sense in the world, given he initially fought against Judgment Day alongside her. They're the OGs of hating Judgment Day, and now they're aligned against the Terror Twins. Hopefully they tell that story on Monday and moving forward on television. Also, the King of the Ring won the title with his number one contendership. That's a huge positive. I do have more to say about this. I'll let you get in here first, Chris. 4 stars, A-.
This was my match of the night. 4.5, maybe 4.75. I thought this was just unbelievable. The literal definition of big meaty men slapping meat. They beat the piss out of each other. My God. And like,
would you say, Chris, that they needed to reinforce the ring post?
Reinforce the ring post. The beef's going to be flying tonight,
and
gentlemen.
Perhaps there was no water, no bread. All we got was meat.
He don't want no water. He don't want no bread. All he wants is meat.
I mean, there was a lot of beef out there.
There's a lot of beef out here.
I would say all of those things. I gained so much respect for Damian Priest in this match, and I think a lot of people feel the same way. Like, he, for the first time, maybe ever on the main roster, but especially as champion, felt like a dude.
Yeah.
Like a real star. And it's unfortunate that it finally all clicked right as he had to lose the belt to Gunther, because that was the plan from the beginning. And if I just really wish they hadn't dicked around with him the first couple of months as champion and putting him in these situations that were really difficult, did not help him grow. And then because he was a tweener, as this was that, they finally put him in a spot where he's the clear-cut babyface, talked about his background, gave people a reason to get behind him, gave him a douchebag of an opponent who you could easily boo, and then they let them go out and just ball out. It looked awesome. And so, like, Priest, I don't want to say he was, like, made in this match, but he's as made as he's ever been. And it's unfortunate it came in a losing effort. But it's about as, it's to me, it's about as over as you can get while you're losing your title. I think. So major props to him, man. He has killed it these last couple of weeks. We were hard on him the first few months as champion. A lot of people were. But they really found something, and he found something these last few weeks. And I hope they can keep that going, because you could see it in this match, what they've seen in him. And you just wish they had clicked it earlier, and that he could have had a reign that was more memorable.
But you know what? He is not the first, and he will not be the last wrestler to get a title reign. And you go, that was kind of disappointing. Maybe this guy shouldn't be a world champion. And then when it comes back around, they're ready for it. A great example is Liv Morgan, okay? She was made champion, and we all wanted that for her. She won Money in the Bank. She beat Ronda Rousey a few times. She looked kind of good doing it. She had no agency. She had no character. It was just, we were pleased that someone we liked, that we saw improving, won the championship. Now, Liv Morgan is a legitimate women's champion in this company, could win at any time, beat anybody, and it's completely believable. And I think it's very similar with Priest. He won via Money in the Bank, just like Liv did, and he had a lot of happenstance defenses because people interfered, or one thing happened or another thing happened. And you're just like, wow, they're really building him weak. He's not doing well in promos. He's had a couple really unfortunate botches in his matches, that some of which may have been his fault, others of which certainly were not his fault. There was one botch in this match. Guess who it was? It was Gunther. It was not Priest. This was the cleanest match that he wrestled. Again, not that the others were his fault, but in this defining match of this title reign, even though he lost, it was the cleanest and best match that he had. And that all needs to be said, and all needs to be appreciated. You know, to take a guy who was Punishment Martinez, and by the way, WWE 24, the documentary on Priest, it airs Monday. So we will be able to see that potentially, depending how busy you and I are, before we tape our next show. I'm going to try as hard as I can to watch it, because it's been hyped up and I've heard it's actually fantastic. But to take a guy who is Punishment Martinez, make him a legitimate character and a high quality wrestler, which, for being candid, he really wasn't as Punishment Martinez, and have him win that North American Championship, I believe, in NXT, and then bring him up to the main roster. And he's a legitimate tag team title holder, and he's a legitimate faction leader. And it took a while, it took a couple months, but he becomes a legitimate world heavyweight champion. I mean, that speaks volumes to what WWE has done creatively and how much work Priest has put in individually. So they deserve a lot of credit. I wanted to circle back. My frustration with the booking is that I obviously wished and hoped for a while, you've all heard me talking about it, that Priest and Balor would feud over the world title. Now, I can fully understand Triple H not wanting both the men's and women's titles on Raw fully revolving around the Judgment Day storyline. That said, he's also doing the Judgment Day split concurrently with the Bloodline Civil War. Now, they're vastly different storylines, but they are similar formats. Now, we are getting Terror Twins against the remaining crew. That's going to be fantastic. There'll be a combination of mixed matches, singles matches, stipulations, maybe ultimately, as we mentioned, Ripley and Dominic at WrestleMania. But the question always stands when you come out of this, and this is what I asked earlier when it came to CM Punk and Drew McIntyre. Do you now want to watch Raw to see what happens next? In that case, it was because I have no idea what the hell they're going to do. In this case, it's because I cannot wait. I want to know how the hell this is going to move forward, and I want to know what the hell they're going to be doing with Priest and Balor. Because really, if they had a world title feud, that would have been everything that the vast majority of the fan base wanted. But now they're going to be feuding pretty much over nothing.
Well, again, I think they, in most situations, would. But this is just Gunther's time. It just is. Where he is in his career and the fact that they're going to Germany.
But is it ever not going to be his time? I mean, the guys hold the title. I love Gunther. You guys, look, I shouldn't even need to qualify it, okay? I think he's possibly the best wrestler in the entire world.
You're a hater. Yeah.
But he has held the title. I mean, I'll have to do the calculation. Probably what? 85, 90, 95% of his entire time on the main roster. And now he's the world heavyweight champion who you cannot beat him quickly. So he's taking that title into WrestleMania.
Yep.
It's kind of repetitive is all I'm saying.
It is. But I was thinking about this during the match. Like, that's just Gunther's job. He is,
yeah.
Big bad guy who holds a belt for a long time. That's just kind of what his character is. And it works. Because I was thinking, because I was like, man, I'd love for Priest to win. But I was like, man, if Priest loses, like, where does Gunther go from there? Like, kind of big monster is his character. And not to say he can't do other things and get into good storylines, but he's really, really good at this. Mm-hmm. And that's taking advantage of what he's doing. The other part of it is, look, Finn, I think it's clear. It was clear a year ago at SummerSlam. I don't think Finn's ever winning the world title again.
I disagree. I think he will.
Well, if Gunther's going to hold this title forever and the other one is being held by
yeah, but he just signed like a 3 or 4 year contract. So, I mean,
yeah, that's true.
Listen, I have to believe people say this all the time, and I know we're going long here, but they say, "Oh man, clearly Triple H hates Finn Balor." Did you watch Triple H book Finn Balor in NXT? Do you realize the reason why Balor, when he got called up to the main roster, was even capable of becoming the first Universal Champion? Was because of the way Paul Levesque booked him. I promise you, he does not hate Finn Balor.
No,
he loves Finn Balor. At the same time, since he's had the pencil and he's been booking this show, Finn Balor could have capably been champion. Could have beaten Rollins. Rollins could have won it back. He could have won recently. You know, they could have not had Gunther win and had Balor beat Priest for the title, and they haven't. So, you know, it's like, when is it actually going to go down? I don't know when. I'm holding out hope. Fingers crossed.
Which is why the first time the Getting Over Wrestling podcast was ever mentioned on WWE TV was when I asked Triple H about Finn Balor at last year's SummerSlam press conference.
Right,
so,
in Detroit.
I don't know about Finn's future, but look, theoretically, Judgment Day Civil War is a big enough story that doesn't need a title. And I want to say, pour one out for Judgment Day, which was an unbelievable faction for the last couple of years after such a dreadful start.
Yeah.
When it was Edge, it was WrestleMania 38 when Priest joined up with Edge to beat AJ Styles. And once they kicked Edge out and it just got to be the cool kids running things, they really took off. And every single member of this group, except Carlito, who doesn't count, is better for having been a part of it.
Dude, Carlito was doing nothing. He's better also. They're all better.
Yeah. Like, Finn Rhea, Dom, Priest, R-Truth, JD McDonough, and I guess Carlito.
Yeah.
They're all better off for having been a part of this. And that's everything you would have wanted out of Judgment Day, they got. And they got it without Edge. Which is fascinating. But they carried Raw for months at a time. And major shout out to them because they were great. They seemed to really love being with each other, and it always came through on the screen. And so pour one out for the Judgment Day, which seems to be now done. Great faction.
Judgment Day without the Judgment Day exceeded every expectation anyone could have had for it. It truly was an awesome faction. And I don't think it's over. I mean, again, you have the Terror Twins. They're off. Maybe they rename themselves, but you have a group here. JD McDonough is going to follow Balor, whatever he does. You have Dom and Liv together. That's at least 4. Carlito, we'll see. So I don't think it's done. I just think it might change the name. I don't know what the hell they would call it, but it'll be super, super interesting. Let's move on. We'll talk more about Judgment Day this coming Tuesday on our WWE episode, which includes Fallout, of course, from SummerSlam and everything that happens on Raw Monday night. Let's move to the WWE Women's Championship. Bayley defending against Nia Jax. There was an excellent video package for this match on SmackDown. After it was over, Jax handed Tiffany Stratton her new Money in the Bank briefcase, which we'll talk more about on Tuesday. Frustrating for me that not one of the women on the SummerSlam card got a live appearance in front of the crowd across 5 hours of go-home television. They got video packages and promos, and the matches were built, and they got plenty of TV time in the weeks prior. But to just push them off to the side on the go-home really frustrated me.
Totally agree. I think we said that on the preview too, and it was happened again on SmackDown.
Jax wore her Queen of the Ring crown to the ring. It was probably makeup, but she was glowing under the lights. She had a Samoan drop early, but missed a leg drop on the apron. Bayley caught Nia in a guillotine off the ropes, an NXT callback pointed out by Cole. Good job by him. Nia hit a surprising rolling senton, then a leg drop, but Bayley avoided an avalanche version of the leg drop. Bayley to belly followed for a false finish. Jax avoided Rose Plant, hitting the corner Uranagi plus Annihilator for a shocking false finish. She screamed, "I'm reckless, I'm so clumsy," and started headbutting Bayley, but she ran into the ring post. Nia then caught a Bayley tope suicida, hitting Samoan drop ringside. Jax added a hip attack, but Bayley stopped Annihilator, pulling her off the ropes with an absolutely sick powerbomb. The crowd erupted with holy shit chants. Bayley added the flying elbow drop as Tiffany Stratton ran in with her Money in the Bank briefcase. Bayley yeeted her straight off the apron. She looked ready to beat Nia, only to eat a pop-up powerbomb, a regular powerbomb, and not one but 2 Annihilators as Jax won the WWE Women's Championship in 12 minutes. She and Tiffany celebrated after the bell, and Nia even hugged Ada Maivia, who was sitting in the front row. This was effing awesome. There's going to be a section of fans that will vote for this as the worst match of the night, or maybe second worst, because I'm sure people didn't like the main event, because it's Nia, or because it was slow at the beginning, or whatever. It was fantastic. One of the best matches of Jax's entire career. Bayley was exceptional. It was indeed slow to start, and it was the 4th straight match to include a spot where someone runs shoulder first into the post in the early portion. It's a legitimate criticism. It's one I'm seeing getting exaggerated by people for disingenuous complaining, but it is a legit criticism. But the action picked up markedly. Nia showed off her improved skill set throughout. The planned fake cash-in was super smart within storyline, and Bayley was kept strong, not only becoming the first to kick out of Annihilator, but eating 2 power bombs and 2 finishers, plus needing the distraction to lose. This was so well-deserved by Jax, who, as far as I'm concerned, is the frontrunner for the meaty for most improved wrestler this year. She has become a legitimate hoss in this division and someone capable of carrying the title just as well as most of her peers. This was right on the border for me. I'm at 3.75 stars, B+. And let me just tell you right now, if you didn't like this match, please do me the favor and watch it a second time. I promise you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, I thought it was great. It was slow at the beginning, but that happens. And the match really picked up, and the finish in the last couple minutes of this match were electric, completely electric. Nia coming out with the crown looked awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I had forgotten about the crown because she hasn't been wearing it, or I don't think she's been wearing it, carrying it around,
she hasn't.
unless I missed it. It looked menacing, like it really did. It added to the whole thing, and so you had both the King and the Queen of the Ring win their title shots at SummerSlam, which I think was really important and needed to happen to legitimize
both King and Queen of the Ring winners, both Royal Rumble winners, 4 for 4 this year.
Yeah, and
one Money in the Bank so far was successful, and the other, of course, was unsuccessful. That was this year's Money in the Bank was unsuccessful. Last year's was successful, but it happened in 2024.
So, yeah, and so that's important. And yeah, Nia's been great. Like that match against Becky Lynch on day one was fantastic, and she's been really good. I thought her rematch in Australia was fine. Some people really hated on it because it was a bit clunky at the beginning.
This was better than that.
Oh, totally better than that. And Nia's done a great job, and happy for her to get back to this point. And I was kind of surprised because this gave us this was the title change. I don't think either of us predict?
No, I predicted it. I predicted it.
Okay, I did not.
I was going to mention this later. But you and I went out of our way to pick matches against expectation just to create some variety in our picks.
Yeah.
And we both were wrong on the one that we did that with, and the title change happened. So I picked Priest, you picked Bayley, and Gunther and Nia won.
Yeah. But so yeah, I mean, I'm curious about Bayley moving forward. Broke away from Damage Control. Great moment at WrestleMania, doing her singles thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I thought she'd win. I was like, there's still a lot more Bayley can do as champion, but I can't deny that Nia has been really good, and I'm looking forward to her as champion. So I don't know what happens with Bayley after this, but we'll see. Good for Nia.
I could see a Bayley rematch happening immediately at Bash in Berlin because she's so over in Europe. So it makes sense to do that match again. But after that, I agree with you because she's not going to win the title back. I'm not exactly sure what they do with her. The big three seems to have a feud going on. So that takes her and Naomi working together out of the picture. It's going to be really interesting to see how they play the Bayley deal. But that's why we continue to watch the television. So congratulations to Nia Jax. And by the way, she received a lot of positive support on Twitter from WWE superstars. Paul Levesque was super praiseworthy of her. And I think Tiffany Stratton also was. So there's a lot of goodwill going her way. She's the example of someone, and you can disagree with her opinions on one thing or another, whatever the case. She put in the work, and it proved itself out in on-screen success. And she's been safer, she's been better, and she's been more entertaining. And that's all people ever wanted from her, primarily for her to be safer. And it's all worked out. She's champion. And, I hate to use the "you deserved it" deal. She did. She deserved it. I'm glad she got it. Let's move to the United States Championship. Logan Paul defending against L.A. Knight. The Cleveland homecoming celebration on SmackDown opened hour 2. Tons of heat for Logan, obviously, with a top tier low T Logan P sign right across from the hard cam. I loved that shit. The piece of crap bragged about only defending the title twice before Nick Aldis questioned the legitimacy of the Cleveland folks who were in the ring. He unveiled a banner to hang in the arena. It was a picture of him, but it had "yeah" written over it. So Knight entered in a new leather vest saying Logan was from Westlake, not Cleveland. That's a private school. What's the matter, dog? You embarrassed? He actually had one great line saying Logan's head was so empty they were going to open a Spirit Halloween up there. Timely mention as well. And then mid-segment, LA just decides to go backstage and find a fresh banner. Funny interaction with Pretty Deadly before he came across a Prime wrapped, I think, Hummer, and he decided to get it, steal it, and he drove it off. If we're being candid, this kind of sucked. Like, the crowd was white hot for Knight. They were happy to boo Paul. But looking at it from a quality standpoint, neither promo really delivered. Knight had one cutting line, and stealing a car was like a big whatever. We've seen it done 1,000 times in wrestling. The build for this was stretched so long. They just simply struggled bringing it home.
Yeah, it was similar to Punk McIntyre in that like it was red hot and then it wasn't as hot coming in.
Right.
And I think people were kind of disappointed by that go home because he promised them a new banner and he just didn't deliver. He just took a car and left. That was weird.
It was very strange the way they put that together. So moving to SummerSlam. MGK entered with Logan Paul. You know, the dude who got straight up dissed out of the rap game by Eminem and literally had to change his career that he got burned so bad. It got real heat from me. Two absolute pieces of shit alongside one another. Logan obviously worse, but still.
And Cole called him a rapper. I was like,
he's not a rapper. Yeah. Slim Shady kicked his ass right out of the rap game, I promise. Marshall Mathers won that feud handily. Anyway, Knight exited the Prime truck, and then he broke the driver's window with a steel pipe. Again, why? Just something that happened. Then he did a quick walk and talk promo, wholly unnecessary. Logan was also wearing Browns colors, obviously. Do you have any thoughts here before we get to the match?
Having a pro wrestler break the window of a car has some bad history. So I was very glad that nothing happened, especially when he hit it the first time and it didn't break.
He scratched it the first time.
Yeah, so it was whatever.
Okay. So Knight attacked before the bell, ramming the Prime cart into Paul, but the champion quickly got the upper hand. Still wearing his vest, LA basically did a burning hammer onto the announce table, which did not break. That really should be his finisher. Loud fuck you Logan chants. Paul did Naomi's split leg drop for some reason. Knight hit the catch power slam, then a Uranagi style side effect. He also jumped from the middle to the top rope for an elbow drop. This guy's breaking out some fresh moves here. Logan did a springboard clothesline, knocking LA off the apron before doing a turnaround springboard moonsault that was simply sick. He got "you still suck" chants, so you know it was good. Knight countered the punch to a BFT, countered to a backslide kickout. Logan then landed the punch for a false finish. Knight avoided the frog splash, but Paul grabbed the top rope to prevent a BFT. LA hit the box jump superplex, but it was kind of like a brainbuster because Paul didn't get his legs all the way over. It was a crazy landing. The Prime friends outside the ring talked shit, so Knight pulled them over the barricade and stomped them. Paul ran him into the post and then grabbed the brass knuckles from MGK. Logan caught him with a punch, but LA ducked the buckshot lariat and hit BFT to win the United States Championship in 12 minutes. But it was really like 16 or 17 minutes because they had so much pre-match action. In the end, LA Knight is US champ. Yeah. Wow. Okay, Logan was awesome again, but really, LA Knight was even better. Might have been his best match in WWE from a performance standpoint. From the pre-match brawl to the in-ring wrestling, everything they did outside the ring, Knight displaying some new inventive moves. It all hit. The false finishes and the swerves were on point. And really, the only thing I didn't get as a viewer was to see MGK knocked on his ass. That would have been like the cherry on top for me. I saw comments about Knight not selling the brass knuckles. It wasn't a full punch. It was a glancing blow. It completely played in reality. Commentary should have explained it better. It was the only singular flaw in the entire match, and I don't think it was a flaw at all. The real question we need to ask ourselves, given how long we've talked not only about LA Knight winning the title, but winning it off Logan at the show, is this. Was it worth the wait? For my money, it absolutely was. 4.25 stars, A.
So I had the same thought about the brass knuckles because when he gets up and hits the BFT, I was like, wait a minute, I thought he just got hit with the brass knuckles. I had to like rewind it. I'm like, okay, I guess he didn't get all of it.
Yeah, he didn't wind up. He just barely hit him like upwards. It wasn't a full swing.
It wasn't as clear. I agree that commentary should have told, because it was a weird spot to do in that moment too. But anyway, the jump from the LA Knight jump from middle rope to top rope into the elbow while he's facing in the ring.
How do you do that? Yeah.
That is an insane spot.
Uh-huh.
It's different if your back's to the ring because when you jump, you can pull your legs underneath.
Right. And you can look at where you're going.
Yeah. That's really hard. I couldn't believe it. I was like, holy crap. Like, commentary even noticed it too. Like, that was a crazy good spot. The Logan Paul, moonsault thing was as well. I was worried early on with how long the brawl was going. I was like getting concerned that we weren't going to get the match. Because it was not something you typically get in a pay-per-view situation. I was like, oh god, are they gonna hold this off for another month or something like that? Or what? Or maybe Logan's supposed to win and they don't want him to win because of his whole thing, and they're gonna delay this. I was worried because it was a pretty long thing there. The superplex, like you said, the rotation was not all the way there, and it could have been really bad. Glad everybody is okay.
Mm-hmm.
Corey Graves made a comment during the match, acknowledging that Logan Paul is controversial, but that he gets the world talking and he makes you take a side, essentially.
Oh,
which
I didn't even hear that. I'm glad I didn't.
I'm sorry, but I'm paraphrasing. But no,
yeah,
we don't need to get into the whole thing.
Yeah,
but I was very
either
glad.
address it fully or ignore it. Like those are the only two options. Don't like try to use it, but not fully go in and say what he said. I mean, it was despicable, but continue.
Yeah. And LA Knight didn't say anything about it, or, post show or anything like that. Didn't need to use that to make himself the babyface here.
Right.
But I was very glad that he won for myriad of reasons. And yeah, man, he's 41 and just won his first title in WWE. That's really cool. And he had some comments in the post show about hearing that people think maybe he's starting to decline and he's not as hot as he was. But no, a really cool moment for him. A guy that I've believed in for a long time and that you never did. And I think it's really cool that this happened.
Babyface LA Knight, man. It's unbelievable what he is accomplishing right now.
Wild.
It's crazy. And, we talked about when all the times they didn't put the title on him, right? And is he going to stay so hot? And this is what people have been dooming and glooming WWE. Cody's not going to stay popular. Sami Zayn's not going to stay. Jey Uso, LA Knight, they're all still mega over LA Knight as much as anyone. The eruption when he won that title, man, I miss moments when we do this show because I'm taking notes. So I have to look down, make sure I have the right things. I don't get to enjoy it so much or experience it fully. That's why we do the SummerSlam Fallout on Tuesdays, because I get to rewatch it and experience things more fully. This is one of those moments where I was like, oh, that's awesome that he won. But I didn't get to actually soak it in. And I have a feeling when I watch it back, it's going to hit even bigger than it did. But it was a great moment. Well-deserved for LA Knight. And a necessary title change, given the person who had it defended it twice in 200 and however many days, which was absolutely ridiculous. Pretty much worse than Roman Reigns to that degree. Let's move to the Intercontinental Championship. Sami Zayn defending against Braun Breaker. Zayn avoided a spear immediately at the bell, with Breaker flying into the ring post and eating a tope con hero. Braun quickly came back with a Steiner line and then break-in Steiner. There was an odd moment where it looked like Breaker might have gotten knocked a little bit, but he was checked and okay. Zayn countered a flying bulldog with a blue thunderbomb and an exploder suplex. Breaker countered a haluva kick with a perfect spear. He followed with a double rope run spear, and he won the Intercontinental title in 6 minutes. There's only so much to say here. It was too fast for my taste. Sami ended Gunther's 666-day Intercontinental title reign. He ended the Usos' record tag team championship reign. He took record title holder Roman Reigns to the absolute limit, yet he lost in 6 minutes to Braun. I get the booking of Breaker coming across like an unstoppable freight train. Zayn just happened to be in the way, but he still would have come across dominant if this got 10 minutes instead of 6. I mean, they literally wrestled for twice as long at Money in the Bank just a month earlier. There were positives to the match, though. The reversals and avoidances that played into the idea of them studying one another and being better prepared for the match. It's clear Breaker was taking Zayn more seriously, just like they told us he would in storyline. The moment was tremendous. Breaker, at age 26, is now the youngest Intercontinental Champion since Cody Rhodes in his second reign in 2012. The pop was immense for him. Super cool that his dad and his uncle were in attendance, as were, by the way, Diamond Dallas Page, Kevin Nash, and others. But as a match, for me, it left a lot to be desired. 3 stars, B-.
Yeah, it was a tough spot because this was the second match and we had just had Rhea Liv, great opener, the drama of Dom. Then this comes on. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I would have liked more time. There wasn't much to the match. It really was too quick to kind of have a clear opinion, but clearly this was, as we thought, just simply about crowning Braun as your next big star, which is what they did. And they hyped it up properly. Everybody was picking Braun. Like we all knew this was going to happen. People thought, hey, maybe he should just squash him. And it wasn't a squash, but it wasn't a long enough match to be like, oh man, Braun is great anyway.
I would call it Chris, a respectable squash.
Yeah, and it's really just like, holy crap, look at that spear. Look how fast he's running. This dude is dominant. We know Braun can go. Again, these guys just went for twice as long a month ago. So there's not like a worry, they're covering up things he can't do. No, like
he can do everything. Yeah.
Braun's going to be a star. Braun's a star. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to it. And Cole, I think, declared it the beginning of the Braun Breaker era.
I just hope this doesn't lead to another Sammy doubting himself storyline for the upteenth time. We just got the Rocky gimmick. He always questions his ability. I'd be fine with a rubber match, but I'd prefer for him to kind of just move on and somehow do it without throwing a pity party for himself.
I want to get Sammy and Jey Uso as a tag team and start moving into that and go from there.
It seems likely. Don't forget they were having issues with Judgment Day, and Priest was trying to move them away from that, but since now he's not, maybe that's the team that he has to go up against Judgment Day. It would make a lot of sense, and it would help him get super over as a babyface. So we will find out Monday on Raw. There was also a popcorn segment with Awesome Truth announcing 57,000 plus for SummerSlam, a U.S. attendance record for the show, obviously. The overall record was at Wembley Stadium in 1992. By the way, for the particular journalist out there who continues to say WWE ridiculously inflates their attendance numbers, they actually stopped doing that a while ago, maybe a year even to this point. WWE legitimately sold 56,000 tickets. So announcing 57.5 or however many, that accounts for suites and stuff, that is not an exaggerated number. That seems pretty legitimate. It makes all the sense in the world. Anyway, A-Town Down Under interrupted talking shit about Miz, Cleveland, and Jelly Roll. I'll say 80% of what they said I agreed with. So I just found that interesting. Truth and Miz got into an argument, calling the heels the Rock and Roll Express, given they're in Cleveland. Then Jelly Roll popped into the ring with a steel chair. The faces held the heels prone for 2 chair shots. And then Jelly Roll, this mother effer, chokeslammed Theory with a single hand, no arm on the back or anything. And then this freaking guy teamed up with Awesome Truth for a 3-way 15-knuckle shuffle. This dude totally won me over here. Theory sold his ass off on the chokeslam. This entire segment was fun. It had no business being good, and yet it was.
That chokeslam was incredible. And it's 95% on Austin Theory.
Yeah.
Who really got up. You never think about we've seen bad choke slams. You got to time it right. The guy, you realize you're not picking the guy up by his throat. He's leaping into it. That's how you get the height.
Right.
And my goodness, that was one of the better choke slams we've ever seen. He just one-handed it. It was all because of Theory. So yeah. I don't think we do a media for sell job of the year, but that might be the winner.
It was fantastic. Real quick, before we get to our grades of SummerSlam, some of the extraneous items I wanted to talk about. The 3-hour countdown show, it was indeed ridiculously long. I realized that it came across, Chris, like they were pretty much doing College Game Day, where it doesn't need to be that long, but it wasn't that big of a deal once you started watching it. I don't know if you saw it, any of it or all of it. What did you think?
I didn't see a second of it.
Okay.
I was busy with some things that popped up. So,
Fair enough.
I caught it on Twitter, but I didn't watch any of it to know if it was good or not.
And then regarding Jelly Roll, the biggest positive I can share is the audio sounded good. And while it remains for me inherently ridiculous to have a musical act on a wrestling show like this, better that it opened the show with people getting to their seats as opposed to randomly happening in the middle. And what they did here was they used the live performance as a soundtrack for the SummerSlam show opening video package. That is the best possible use of doing something like this. So I was super pessimistic about it coming in. I told you Jelly Roll as an individual won me over. I'm not saying I want this on every show, but if they do it again in the future and they do it in the same way, I'm not going to be a pessimist about it.
I agree on all counts. That's the way you do it. Beginning of the show. Interesting. They did God Bless America and not Star Spangled Banner. Hadn't they been doing Star Spangled Banner now?
So no, they did. They did both eventually, I think, at WrestleMania, because they did different songs, I think, on both nights. I'm forgetting, but
I'm remembering.
Money in the
Canada,
Bank,
Toronto. That's where Money in the Bank was.
But that's because you have to do "O Canada" before the show. So they did the Star Spangled Banner. They had Samantha Irvin do it. That's why they did.
Yeah, I don't remember. Did they do God Bless America at WrestleMania? I don't remember. But they don't do America the Beautiful anymore.
They did one. I think they did one night of America the Beautiful and one night of God Bless America. I think.
I don't remember. Either way. Yeah, this was a much better way to go about it. But I think I'd rather just have Samantha Irvin sing to us.
Me too.
The show instead of Jelly Roll.
I know. She's fantastic. I would hope so too. Friend of the show, Samantha Irvin. Lastly, WWE had 2 more in-ring ads. Besides Prime in the middle, Wingstop and Straight Talk Wireless each got 2 corners with Prime all over the turnbuckles. This was inevitable. We've been talking about it. And really, I was fine with it. The 2 things I wish they did. One, the Wingstop logo. I just wish it was black instead of green so it clashed less. But the one change I would truly make is in each corner, the Prime logo was on the first and third turnbuckle and the WWE logo was in the middle. It was, for me, just a little bit too much. I'd prefer to have the Prime logo in the middle and WWE on the first and third. That way, you at least have a little bit more WWE branding. It was the least visible part of the entire in-ring production. So that's the change I would make.
I got to say, the in-ring ads, I'm not noticing them at all, which is both good in that it's not taking away from my experience, bad in that the advertisement is not working on me, but also bad in that I'd rather not have them. I don't like them, but the Prime one I sometimes notice, but it's not there for every Raw and SmackDown.
Dude, it's way better than the barricade ads. Like, those were atrocious eyesores.
Well, that's what this is what I was gonna say. I wasn't sure if you're gonna bring this up. The barricade ads. They did the WrestleMania thing where like almost every match has its own one, and most of them were fine.
Wait, hold on. Did they have ads on the barricades?
Yeah,
I didn't notice them at all. Seriously.
Well, so there was one for some. It might have been a video game or something. I think it was during the Bayley Nia Jax.
They must have all been dark because I didn't notice them at all. Yeah.
The one during the Nia Jax Bayley match was red and black. It was Monday Night Raw colors.
Oh.
So I didn't notice it at all. But there was one. I think it was Priest Gunther. I think it was for Straight Talk Wireless, and it was lime green and white.
How did I miss that?
I can't believe you didn't notice.
How did I miss? Again, because it's tough. Wow, I'm shocked. I was about to praise them, saying the in-ring ads are better than the barricade ads, and I'm glad they didn't do both. I was about to praise it. I gotta watch that again. Okay, wow.
That's crazy. Very distracting. Because when the WrestleMania ones happened, it was like some of them were fine, some of them were weird, like dude lights. But there was that one for the mortgage company.
Yeah, it was white,
like bright white.
It was terrible
in a dark arena. Hated it. The colors were mostly fine that even you didn't notice. But my biggest gripe about them, even when I don't notice them, is that it takes away from the branding of SummerSlam.
It does.
And so just like we said at WrestleMania, you take all these camera angles and you don't see WrestleMania anywhere. You didn't see SummerSlam anywhere. And I do think that takes away from the feel of everything a bit if you totally do ads and all that stuff. So yeah, go back and watch that. I'm curious your thoughts on Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look at that.
One of them, again, I think it was Priest Gunther. It was like some lime green Straight Talk Wireless. It was a lime green box that showed up in the upper left-hand side.
That I noticed. I noticed the on-screen graphics. I did notice that.
Yeah. So it was hit and miss.
Imagine if you were playing like WWE 2K24 and you decide to use the WrestleMania set and it's just ads. Like, if they're not giving us sets anymore, then at least use the logo on your barricades. You know what I mean? If you take all of it away, it just looks like nothing. You know, outside of it being in a stadium, you wouldn't have necessarily noticed that it was SummerSlam. That's crazy. I did not notice that. I'm going to have to go and really pay a lot more attention to that. Anyway, that goes ahead and wraps up our breakdown of WWE SummerSlam. Let's move to the final portion of the show, our grades. We will start with our pre-show expectation grades. Coming in on the Ultimate Preview, the Silver King thought this would be an A- show, 93. You, Vintage Chris Vanini, said also an A- 93. And our Getting Overheads, I did post the poll late, but still a ton of you voted, and I appreciate that. You came in 78% A, 19% B, 3% C, 0% D or F, a 92.7, which rounds up to a 93. So A- is across the board, 93 is across the board, all exactly in the same wheelhouse. When we do our post-show grades, as always, Chris, I let you go first, then I will read our fan grades, and of course, the Silver King will go last. What is your final grade for the 2024 edition of WWE SummerSlam?
I'm so torn here between A- and A. I mean, we got 4 title changes, which is a lot.
Yeah.
I always want consequence on my show. We got some moments. We got Dom's turn. We got Finn's turn. We got Roman's turn, and then Roman's return to the screen. We got some solid to good wrestling. I thought Gunther versus Damian Priest was a complete and absolute banger. The wrestling elsewhere was Liv Rhea was really good. And so I'm going to go with an A, like a 94 out of 100. I am cognizant of the fact that I think our grades have been, I don't say too high in general, but like it's gotten repetitive that we're always in that same range. I think I gave something like a B- or C+ recently because I was like, we got to kind of widen this range. But this show gave me the things I want in a wrestling show. It gave me turns. It gave me title changes. It gave me a return. All that stuff. So I think I got to go with an A.
And what is your number grade? What is your numerical grade? Just
94.
Okay, so our post-show grades from You Are Getting Overheads, our poll that we posted on Twitter at Getting Overcast. You guys came in 62% A+ to A, 28% A- to B+, 7% B to B-, and 3% C+ or lower, which averages out to a 93.7, which rounds up to a 94. So
we got smart listeners.
So far, we're the same across the board. The question is, will the Silver King feel the same way? So look, this SummerSlam was, proof of what Paul Levesque has said, and we quote on the show all the time. We also say it ourselves before he even said it. Sometimes predictable things can be good. I'll find that sound drop. We'll bring it back to the show. The show was immensely predictable. You and I actually, like I mentioned earlier, had to force ourselves to pick against expectation just to keep it interesting. But it freaking delivered. And it's not that dissimilar from another major show from a different company that we covered recently that was also immensely predictable and yet was super entertaining. 4 title changes on one show was not necessarily surprising, but it was funny that we each tried to pick one that wouldn't happen, assuming Triple H wouldn't book all 4 of them together.
Yeah.
And we got it wrong because they all happened. Now, I will say that Triple H holding every major title change seemingly for WrestleMania or SummerSlam, it is wearing on me. It has made the non-Big 4 shows into actual B-level shows because pretty much nothing of importance happens on them. That said, the major shows do feel monumental because so much does happen on them. And that's pretty much what went down here. I believe, though, that would still be the case if there was at least 1 or maybe 2 notable changes between the huge shows. And hopefully that's what we get now, given there's 8 months still until WrestleMania, which is going to be in late April. From a storyline standpoint, SummerSlam completely delivered. It drove WWE storylines forward. We didn't get as many resolutions as you would want from a major show, but it's clear that WWE right now is super focused on storytelling over wrestling. That may not be your preference. It may not be my preference, or the more specific your preferences, I'm referring to Vintage here, but it is totally working for them. The way I would improve this show is relatively simple. Give the matches a little bit more time. If you threw 4 to 5 extra minutes at a couple of those matches, or added one additional match that went 15 minutes, I think people would digest it a little bit better, because there was an abundance of storytelling and there wasn't an abundance of absolute banging wrestling, which at many other shows that we've been watching and reviewing of late, we have gotten. And maybe we haven't gotten that much storyline development, but we've gotten some exceptional wrestling. And for SummerSlam, I wanted more than that. I still loved the Liv Morgan-Rhea Ripley match, but one of the reasons it was so good was because it was storyline driven. The Damian Priest-Gunther match was super, super hard hitting, but there was storyline at the end that kind of took away from a clean finish. The Logan Paul LA Knight match was super entertaining with some great wrestling that exceeded expectations. But the finish again involved like 4 different people in brass knuckles. So there's not enough of that pure wrestling for me to sink my teeth into for my taste. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong. I'm just telling you how I felt. Also, the show started immensely hot in ring, pretty much through the Bayley-Nia match, but the average quality per match dipped down the stretch. And obviously the CM Punk Drew McIntyre thing did not deliver anywhere near to our expectations. At the end of the day, though, I sat and watched a pretty much 4-hour show, and I was super entertained. And when it comes down to grading the program, it's not the average quality of the matches or how many storylines are wrapped up versus how many are developed. It's when I sat and watched the show, how likely am I to watch it again? And I'm going to tell you, super likely. In fact, I'm definitely going to watch it again, obviously before our Tuesday WWE podcast. So I was thinking, did this exceed my expectations or did it meet them? It exceeded them, but not by much. And the number that I wrote down in my grade section right here was a 94, literally the bottom level of an A, slightly above my expectation of 93. It was not what I would consider a heavy A. It was not a top tier show. It certainly was not an A+. If you compared it directly to WrestleMania 40, it pales in comparison. But was it a damn good SummerSlam and one of the best SummerSlams that we've had in quite some time? And did the Roman Reigns return, which I didn't even mention, deliver? It sure as shit did. So I'm at a 94. You're at a 94. The Getting Overheads are at a 94. This was an A edition of SummerSlam.
The people who want us to have more variety, I guess it didn't happen on the show.
It didn't.
But it is coming. I do think, to your point, all the title changes happening at WrestleMania, all of them happening at SummerSlam, I do think there's a forward part of this that is one, that was Triple H's first WrestleMania, and New Era was the tagline that they gave us. So they did everything there. This SummerSlam might be, for the foreseeable future, the last one-night SummerSlam.
True.
They obviously have 2 nights coming in 2 years from now, and we don't know about next year yet. But Triple H hinted in the press conference, this might be the last one-nighter. So you had to make this SummerSlam really big, really impactful. You had to have a lot of things happen, because that is going to make it more likely you can turn SummerSlam into two days next year. But other than that, yes, I'd like to see more title changes in different spots. Also, by the way, not only did you have title changes on SummerSlam, you had them on the SmackDown before SummerSlam.
Yeah, there were 5 title changes in the last 48 hours or however long.
Right.
26
Spread
hours.
Those, now that you laid your stamp on WrestleMania, you laid your stamp on SummerSlam, let's start to spread those title changes out more, I think, over the next 8 months.
Yeah, but they just can't do it so that the 4 months between WrestleMania and SummerSlam are immensely predictable, where no titles change hands and none of the events in between matter, because they're doing potentially 2 separate 2-night shows within 4 months of each other, and then taking us 8 months until the next WrestleMania without doing that, without having a major tentpole show. And if you're going to continue running SummerSlam in early August, and you're now going to put WrestleMania in mid-late April, I guess is the best way to describe it, the 19th or 20th or so, then you're going to need to figure out a way to change some titles in between, or every single time during the time of year, by the way, Chris, where you're not opposed with the NFL, where you don't have your strongest competition. You can't continue putting on these shows where nothing happens. So this is a conversation we're going to have to revisit next year. We don't know, obviously, what's going to happen until we get past WrestleMania 41, but there's 8 months left now between the next WrestleMania. And I would say there's 5 months left or so. I'm trying to count backwards until Royal Rumble. You got to have some developments on TV and on premium live events between now and then, and they have to involve title changes.
I'll just say, as much as we say like they have to, they are breaking gate records every time that they do these shows, even when there aren't title changes. And obviously, I don't think you can sustain that forever. But
if every single show that you have, other than WrestleMania and SummerSlam, does not include title changes, which is pretty much what's happened so far. The only one that changed hands was because Rhea Ripley got injured, so Becky Lynch had to win, and then Liv Morgan won it off of her. If none of your titles change hands, it will affect your ticket sales. It will affect your ratings.
Not yet, but we're saying at one point it will. But
Eventually.
they're still at the point where cities are giving them massive tax breaks and stuff like that to bring their shows. They non-WrestleMania shows and are getting bid on to come in.
Yeah.
And so WWE is working with a lot of leverage right now where they don't be like, we don't have to give them a title change because we're breaking the gate record anyway. So I don't want to say like they have to, but it is a little concerning, the trend that we are on, to me.
Creatively, they need to, is what I'm trying to say, to keep the show fresh and to keep people engaged, especially your hardcore fans that aren't just jumping in and tuning in for the PLEs. That's the point that we're trying to make. Now, look, we're going to have a ton to talk about. We already do. There's a ton of news items, a bunch of stuff that happened from SmackDown. The Raw after SummerSlam is still to come, of course, on Monday. We will discuss all of that on Tuesday's WWE episode. So make sure you tune in for that and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you're listening to us on, if you have not already. On the way out, allow me to remind you that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
is all about Defy.
So please head on over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast and follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. Send in your questions and comments from SummerSlam, the Raw after SummerSlam. We will read them on the air during our Tuesday WWE show. And don't forget, following us on Twitter at Getting Overcast is how you can vote in these pre and post show polls surrounding all PLEs and pay-per-views. Please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well, for $5 a month or $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You get bonus audio, instant reactions to the major shows, and exclusive news posts. All again for $5 a month or $50 for the entire year at buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Please support the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. Thank you all for listening to this WWE SummerSlam instant analysis episode. Thanks, of course, to Vintage Chris Vanini for joining your boy, the Silver King. But it is late. It is time for us to sign off, and for me to leave you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.